Welcome. Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Laura Fluehr, who is the Director of Sales at Unisys, uh, a, a very experienced enterprise sales leader in the security space, in particular the financial services, which is a very hot space, right? People are investing in security. Financial transaction is just booming, especially on the mobile. So Laura, welcome to the show, and please share with us a little bit about your background, your expertise.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jessica, for having me. Certainly, I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a native, and about, I'd say, 11 years ago, I decided to make a career change from a generalist software salesperson into the world of cybersecurity. And honestly, I haven't looked back. It's been a great, great career move for me. I started out at SecureWorks, which is a company that was headquartered at the time in Atlanta, which ultimately was purchased by Dell back in 2011. But it was a great, great, great experience to get my feet wet and really get a understanding about what the world of cybersecurity is, what it means to businesses, what it means to the boardroom, and what the different career paths. There's a number of career paths.
Now, how did you get into security? I know it's a very technical space. It's a bit intimidating, and so for those who are not very technical, and as a woman in tech in particular, if you want to go into security, what are some of the paths that you could take?
Sure. Well, I was not very technical when I started. I actually had my basis in Lotus Notes, believe it or not, back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then when I wanted to move into cybersecurity, I decided, not having any experience, I just cold called into the VP of sales for a company called SecureWorks, which I had not been that familiar with. And they gave me an opportunity to come in and be part of their inside sales team. And while it was a bit of a step back for a short period of time, I ultimately was promoted into an outside sales role. And it was just some of the best training that I can say. I was really lucky to get that opportunity. Since then, I have gone ahead and gotten a CISM certification because I personally, not having had any experience building networks, building routers or firewalls, I really gravitated towards the risk management space around compliance and governance. And I found that very easy to talk to the governance risk compliance people within accounts that I call on, much more so than maybe the network security folks, certainly in the beginning part of my career.
What is the CISM certification? Is that?
Yeah, that's a Certified Information Security Manager certification that ISACA gives to folks. And I got that when I was at IBM. And again, that really helped me shape what I would call more business conversations with the end user clients that I was working with, to talk about what how do they look at risk? How do they look at their IT operational risk versus mapping that to their business risk? And those were some really easy, for me, those were easier, more interesting conversations to have around security initially.
Well, I hear sometimes people say that security leaders, the CISOs, don't necessarily want to talk with sales folks who are not technical. In other words, they don't want to just be talking to a pretty face and really want to have a technical discussion with the engineers. How do you handle those kind of situations?
That's a great question. And I'll tell you, today at Unisys, I sell a really pretty technical solution. It's a zero trust microsegmentation solution called Stealth. And certainly it's not something that someone who doesn't have a basis knowledge within cybersecurity could go in and talk to a client or prospect about. My experience, and everyone is different, but my experience with enterprise sales is initially in cybersecurity, I really felt strongly that I needed to become more technical simply to get my foot in the door. To get my foot in the door to say, you should be willing to talk to me because I've got this certification or that certification and this amount of experience. Once you're in the door, I do agree that while it's nice to have some amount of knowledge and understanding, you're always going to have an engineer and an architect that you're going to rely on. particularly with a solution like the microsegmentation solution that I sell today, is very technical with components around identity access management, encryption, cryptographic processes and specific protocols. So with that said, I'm a fan of it can't hurt to become more technical, I don't think. Certainly, I know a number of smart salespeople who are phenomenal at networking, and I need to be better at networking. If I today said, how can I improve, my overall work day, work week, and month, it's networking more, because at the end of the day, yes, technically understanding cybersecurity is important, but I'll tell you, relationships, sales is sales, and relationships are important, and being able to listen and really, network and meet the right people at the right time. Hey, that's what it's about.
Yeah, right now we're not meeting anybody in social gatherings, conferences, or, all of those meetups, local meetups anymore. We're all sitting at home. So how do you continue to do enterprise sales given this shelter in place?
That's a big question, and that's not an easy question. I was just talking to a colleague of mine about that, and we were talking about the spaces in which we see activity right now and areas that we don't. So certainly we're gravitating towards places where we have activity, and for those who have put projects on hold, we are continuing to reach out to them, talk to them, but you can't, what's the saying? You can't push rope. If they are not ready to move right now because of this crisis that we're all in, go where you have folks saying yes. And right now, some of the folks that we're working with are twofold. In the public sector, Unisys has a strong public sector footprint, and so I'm working on some public sector state-related opportunities, and I'm also working with clients doing some early renewals. So we're talking about early renewals with some of our existing client base. So honestly, it's not easy. It's not easy out there right now to be a salesperson, but there's areas in which I'm certainly keeping busy and finding opportunities.
Yeah, I hear some sales folks sending lunches to the prospects and doing a virtual lunch gathering to share the experience of being very empathetic to everyone's situation. I heard about virtual happy hours. So people do need to get creative to establish these virtual gatherings.
Right. Yeah. No, that's very creative. Now, I'll tell you again, keeping in touch, understanding that we're doing some things from a marketing team that's trying to help us with that. But certainly, I go back to relationships. Right. I mean, this is who do you have the relationships with? Because in this time, we're just going to have a bit of a pause for some of our net new greenfield clients that we're trying to pursue.
Laura, I want to ask for tips. I know you mentioned about having friends who have shifted from the compliance role into a CISO role, and that seems to be a path that is very attractive for women in tech. Is that right?
Absolutely. I've got a couple of colleagues and friends who started out in the governance, risk, and compliance role, in an auditor role, that have moved up throughout their organization into being promoted into higher level leader roles. And one in particular here in Atlanta who just recently moved from a VP of governance, risk, and compliance into the CISO role. And one of the reasons, I mean, I couldn't be more thrilled to see that, and it happens to be that she's a woman, but one of the reasons that I do see that path from time to time in that GRC space is because the GRC folks are very much mapped to the business results, the business outcomes. So they are presenting reports, audit reports to the board, and they're able to take very technical IT security related issues, spend, budget, where their gaps are, where the remediation is happening, and put that into business terms. And then talk about things like risk tolerance, risk avoidance, risk transfer. So it's a very friendly role and language to the board of directors and the C-suite within the organization. And to me, I think it's a natural progression into a CISO role.
That's fabulous. Yeah, and I mean, it's a great idea because there are a lot of women in these compliance roles that you're talking about, right? Tend to be a lot.
There are. Yep, a lot.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's a great example. I want to ask for your sales tips, because being enterprise sales, you mentioned you don't have to be very technical, but being technical will open the door. Obviously, that's a positive thing. But networking is really a key factor in being successful. Talk to us a little bit more about that. What you're seeing works, and you would recommend doing more of it.
Right. Well, I've got a couple of colleagues, some in Australia, globally, but one in particular that I talk to from time to time, and we both talked about, the ISACA. Every major city has an ISACA, and ISACA is one of the security certification bodies. So you've got SANS, ISACA, CompTIA that issue certifications, and there's great communities that are local to each major city. And so that is one particular organization that I'm involved in. And then in a broader swath, and this is one that is specific to Atlanta, there's just a large technology professionals association. So there's numerous ways in which to get involved and network with like-minded people who are in your same profession, working with clients. One thing I've seen that has been very interesting to me in Atlanta is we've got Atlanta's a pretty sizable, city, and we've got some pretty impressive CISOs, particularly in the financial services space and the payment processing space. And I see a lot of them looking to promote their brands. So for these specific organizations that I'm talking about, they're looking for opportunities to speak, to promote their brand, their specific area of knowledge base. If they're specific to, they're focusing on zero trust or focusing on software-defined networking, the networking community gives them that opportunity to get their feet wet in terms of becoming, more speaking engagements. And we certainly have not a shortage in Atlanta of opportunities to get involved like that.
Yes, I think networking is very important, and that relationship building and networking is not just about prospecting, right? Networking is also finding alliances so that you can recommend solutions and and actually team up and provide the complete solution, because often it's not just one solution, but many that work together in an ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, I have a big partner group of folks who resell our solution. And so working with them within the community and finding networking opportunities for each other, it's certainly a great way to, like you said, give to get, right? If I find an opportunity for you, that's great. And become referrals for each other as well is a great way to network. So yeah, for sure.
In the finance and payment space that you're very familiar with, can you share with us some of the innovations, the trends of deploying innovation? As a consumer, everybody's aware of mobile payment, different platform for paying your share of the meal with friends. There's so many apps out there, and now contactless payments, because no one wants to touch anything anymore. What are some of the new technology implementations?
Sure. So you're right. It's very interesting how fast, and I mentioned this to you previously in a previous conversation, how fast everyone has taken to using their phone for payments. As a security practitioner, I'm just absolutely shocked, but I shouldn't be. They ran to cloud that fast, right, 10 years ago. As I mentioned, if the demand is there, if convenience, if cost savings is there, that will always supersede the security concerns.
Right.
Always. We mentioned 5G. Always, we're going to worry about security after the fact.
Well, yeah, I guess security has to try to catch up and protect us, right? Everybody wants the convenience, the flexibility, and the cost saving, of course. Yes, the demand has pushed us toward these areas, which I know it's a higher risk once we move towards the cloud, more mobile, more IoT. But talk with us. How are you going to help?
So with payments, that's even more so. So, which has been very interesting. But the first thing, I'll do a bit of a plug for the payment processors. Some of the smartest people I know in security are frankly, working in the payment processor field, because they have had to deal with this for a very long time. Initially with banks, and now moving towards these more e-payment, these electronic payments. they are really, really sharp and on top of it, and they do spend money to ensure that they have the technology that they need. One of the things that's very interesting, so payment processors and retail merchants today, they have a lot of merchants, the payment processors do, a lot of merchants that are fairly small, right? They have mom and pop, they have large ones and they have small ones. They have small ones that are hair salons, nail salons, landscapers, parking vendors, et cetera, really small that can't afford any security. I've called on them, like they can't even afford vulnerability scanning. So very, very, and that's the weakest link for payment processors, because if you look at Home Depot or Target or a particular payment processor down here in Atlanta, they all were had breaches that originated with a third-party vendor or merchant. This is really interesting to me, which is how do you secure, not, you could have spent millions and millions of dollars on, you know, your own security, but if your weakest link is your merchant whose credentials get stolen, and now they can man in the middle, you know, have that attack, a credentialed attack occur and basically siphon out gazillions of credit card data information. How do you protect against that? And one of the first things that payment processors have done is they've taken PCI out of the scope of their small merchants, and they've said, hey, we're just going to give you this terminal and give you, we're going to take all that PCI responsibility on our own, and we're going to do end-to-end encryption. And that all resides and is owned by that payment processor in terms of liability. So they just take that liability away from the small merchants, which is really smart. I mean, ultimately, you know, the merchants, they pay, you know, in the service for that, but that's a great way to ensure that that is not a weakest link, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, that reduces the security risk, and at the same time, it really strengthens the stickiness of that relationship, right, between the mom and pop shops and the financial provider. Yeah.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah. That's great. It's fantastic. So like I said, I'm a big fan of the work that the payment processors do. And about 80% of all credit card transactions flow through Atlanta. So that's just—
Why is that?
That is because we have some of the major payment processors. We have Global Payments, who bought Heartland and who is merging with TSYS. We have Fiserv and First Data, who have their technology operations, significant technology operations down here in Atlanta. So there just happens to be a fairly large presence, if you will, of payment processors. So anyway, small little tidbit.
Wow, so it's a huge financial industry for you then.
It is, it is. And so then the other piece around, you know, what's going on in that payment space to be more secure is I am starting to see, of all people who are beginning to say zero trust, you know, I think that's something that we could not just, reach for, but actually we could implement, and we could implement it in phases. And so zero trust is not a new concept, but architecturally, the way with the cloud and mobile and software-defined networking and virtualization, clients are seeing now that architecturally they need to protect themselves. They need to look at zero trust architectures in order to protect data as it flows well beyond their perimeter, because it's flowing into cloud, into mobile, into work from home. How do they secure that data in the wild? That's been the question. And so financial institutions and services groups have been absolutely looking at zero trust as a way to help them, particularly with their crown jewels, with their critical applications, implement zero trust principles via a software-defined networking, via microsegmentation. That I'm seeing that, and financial services have been leaders when it comes to security technologies like that.
You must be very busy then if Atlanta has that many financial providers and security. I mean, it's an area that people continue to invest, right? You cannot not invest in security. So it's exciting.
It is exciting, and it is busy, certainly. The other area, and I think that this is something that, again, financial services are doing better than maybe some of the other industries, but is they're looking at automation. They're really looking at automation around security tools, around security operations centers. How can they help automate? Because they're not immune to the fact that there's a skills shortage, right? There is a cybersecurity skills shortage. There is. Yeah. And how do you do more with less? Well, two ways. One, you automate. You use SOAR tools, you use user behavior and analytics tools to help automate certain base level processes within your security operations. And the other way is consolidation. There's not a large enterprise client that I do not walk into that says we have over 50 security tools in place today and they're unmanageable. And they're, oh, by the way, they're siloed and they do a single function. How did you get that? Oh, well, my governance, risk, and compliance person said we had this list of remediation. And so we bought a tool for this and a tool for that and another tool for this, and we remediated and we got a check mark and we're compliant. That's how all those tools built up over time. But that is a huge problem for almost every single client that we walk into, which is, okay, how do we automate? And then we need to do some consolidation where we're buying a security platform that could do many functions, not a silo tool that does one function and so on.
Right, that's true. That's always the case where people go with best of breed or a platform that has some best of breed and the potential to then expand and then be a lot stronger than stitching together little products that eventually just become functions and features in a larger platform. So yes, I agree with you. And automation has absolutely been accelerated even more now that we are moving towards having a lot more devices, a lot more people working from home, a lot more risk endpoints, right?
Yep, no, said well. It's certainly two areas that when we talk to clients that they're saying, these are outcomes that we'd like to see. These are, and how you do that, let us know. But when I went back to as a salesperson, kind of talking about, having a conversation with a CISO or a VP of security operations, who was very technical. They absolutely very technical, but ultimately their business challenges are understandable to the average girl or guy, right? The average person that can say, hey, we need to automate. I don't have a career path. I've had clients say, I don't have a career path for my people. It's a revolving door of people. How do we do this better that, improves our security posture?
Yeah.
If I can't give my folks a career path, that's a problem. So those are the kinds of business conversations that from time to time, particularly at a higher level, that we'll have with clients.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for sharing your thoughts with us around security and particularly in the finance space. Great to have you on the show, share tips and hear about women in tech also. So I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, Jessica. It was my pleasure.
There you have it. Check it out with Jessica Lee, Laura Fluehr from Unisys.